Hi, I'm Joanna with Custom Quilts, and today we're going to learn how to quilt orange peels. So this is a really cool design. I really like to do this whenever I'm making panels for like a quilted bag or the background of a quilt. Looks really great if you have lots of negative space. And so I've already marked out a grid set at a 45-degree angle from the vertical and horizontal edges of my fabric. And the supplies that you need for this are really basic. All you need is a ruler with a 45-degree angle and some sort of marking utensil. And so you can mark this before you load your quilt. It's not necessary to mark it when it's loaded, but I typically mark after I load just because I don't plan that far in advance and I like to get going. So I'm going to show you how to mark this with a ruler. So I've got a pretty big long arm ruler, which you don't have to have a long arm ruler, just one with a 45-degree angle guide. Or you can have some sort of grid stencil like I have and chalk pounce. The reason that I didn't use the stencil is it's kind of limiting, and I don't like to have 30 different grid stencils in different sizes to be able to accomplish what I need. But if you use a standard size, this is a 1-inch grid. And this is chalk pounce. So what you do is you lay this over the area that you plan to quilt, and then you take the chalk pounce, and this is filled with blue chalk. I don't ever use this one because the blue tends to linger, but I'm just showing you this for an example. And then you take and you put this down on the grid while you're holding it steady, and you rub the chalk pounce all over it, and so that leaves a nice blue line where all of these lines are. And so that's a really quick way to mark. I highly recommend you use the white chalk pounce if you're going to use a stencil. But for this one, I used a ruler. And so I also used a water erasable marker, which might not have been the best idea because it's really humid today and my marks might disappear before I actually get quilting. I already marked my grid, and so I'm going to take you through the steps to mark yours. All you need to do is, with your ruler that has the 45-degree angles, you're going to place the 45 against the edge of your fabric like this. And you need to determine how big you want your orange peels. I put my grid at 1.5 inches. And so basically what that means is once we quilt this up, let's say our square is roughly, this is just an approximate, 1.5 inches. That means our orange peels are going to be about this size, which is what I want. I don't want them any smaller than that because then it's going to take quite a bit more time to quilt up. You can do them larger than that if you want to, or smaller. I usually like this size, or I do a 1-inch grid. And so we line this up, we make our first mark, which mine was right here. And then you use that mark as a reference point to measure 1.5 inches up to mark your next line. So you do that all the way across until you have all of your lines going this way. Then you're going to rotate the ruler and you're going to do the same thing and mark 45-degree lines all the way throughout in the opposite direction. All right, so we've got our lines marked and we're ready to start quilting. I will say, so generally you don't need a ruler foot or anything for this. We're going to do this all freehand. You can use rulers if you want to, but usually it takes a lot longer to make sure that you have the right curve. And it's just a pain in the butt to line everything up. And it's a lot easier once you get going. After you've practiced a few times, it'll just get easier and you'll notice that you don't need a ruler to do that. So I like to mark the first few orange peels before I start quilting because I find that it helps me kind of get in the groove of things and it gives me a visual guide to know where I need to go. And so once I do it a few times, usually I don't need to mark the whole thing, but I'm going to mark just a few to kind of give you an idea of where I'm going, my travel path, and all that good stuff. It's been a while since I've done one of these. I really like this motif. Gives it a lot of pizzazz. So I'm going to mark these. And they don't have to be perfect. Some might be a little bit fatter than others, and that's totally okay. Because any mistakes or whatever you want to call it, they're going to kind of get lost in the repetition of this pattern. So that's a good thing. All right. So I think I'm actually going to start down here. And my camera's probably zoomed in on the wrong thing right now, but that's okay. I'll get this handle moved out of the way once I get going. Okay, so that gave me kind of half finished orange peels, and now I'm gonna come up and I'm gonna go ahead and draw these in just so you can see what I'm doing, where I'm going, so you can kind of predict my path. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go up and do this. And so it's really kind of easy when you're doing half of them, because you're doing like a half circle each time. So I'll go out and do half a circle, and then I'll go back out, back out, back out, just like that, all the way up. And do you see how fast that goes? It's really, really a nice motif to do. I'm going to do this little edge up here. Okay, here we go. All right, now I'm going to come back down. Okay, so I've already quilted this one. I'm going to come over here like that. Finish that guy up. So it's really helpful to have your grid laid out all at once, because you don't really have to make a lot of reference marks. I would recommend that once you start doing this, it's really helpful if you mark your little curves to begin with while you're practicing, and then as you get better and better and more practice, you won't need to mark hardly at all, because you know that you just need to do like a little quarter circle on each line, okay? So let's go ahead. All right, now I'm going to do my half circle. So you can see how quickly this design comes together. And looks really cool. Okay, I'm going to come back down, finish up the other side of these. And so this design is really nice because you don't have to think a whole lot about what you're doing. Aside from the planning part. So you lay out your grid, you mark that, and then maybe you mark some curves to get started. After that, it's just repetitive movement over and over again. And so it's kind of a meditative design. You have to think about it a little bit when you first start practicing, but the more and more you do it, the more naturally it comes. And so I hope that you'll give this a shot. This is a great design to do to give your quilt a little bit of pop. And it looks great if you want to have like a quilted bag or a tote bag or something like that. So break out your rulers and your marking tools. And this is a great motif to practice your free motion quilting. I hope you'll give this one a shot. Thanks for watching.